Hey, do you prefer to find the joy in life, or do you just want some help with that? If so, you're in the right place. So come on in and join the Joy Bunny clan. This is the My Slice of Life podcast. Hello and welcome to the My Slice of Life podcast. My name is Sharon and I am your very own Highland host. Yes, I am. It's the beginning of a new season. The last one was Let's Get Gardening, and I did say this season was going to be completely different, and I don't think you can get more different than the one I've gone with this time. Oh, by the way, if you are new to the podcast and you're wondering what all this is about, this is the place where I bring you a wide range of topics in life which I find interesting, and I hope you will too. That's it in a nutshell. It could be anything from gardening to movie choices, the supernatural, dealing with life's challenges, homemaking, or something like this new season. Anything. Also, there are links in the description to take you to magical, wonderful places like my blog and YouTube channel. And if you fancy, you can also support me by going to my Buy Me a Coffee page or become a patron of the channel, which starts at only $2 a month. Bargain. So lots of ways you can help me bring you lots more content. I am also on a one-woman mission to increase the number of Joy Bunnies around the world. Yes, you did hear me correctly. We are the Joy Bunny clan and we would love you to join us. So follow, like, comment, share, all that sort of stuff. And now, without further ado or waffling, I am delighted to announce the topic of this season, which is season 6. And we are opening the mystery files. Yes, this season I am bringing you some of the best unsolved mysteries out there. Some you might have heard of, but I have a few in these old files which I'm pretty sure will leave you scratching your head and asking why you've never heard of it. Why don't you know more about it? There's some that I've been looking and going, why is nobody talking about this? So to start us off, I'm going to go with one of my personal favourites, the Flannan Isles Mystery. The mystery is the disappearance of 3 lighthouse keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Duckett and Donald MacArthur, who vanished from the Flannan Isles Lighthouse in Scotland on December the 15th, 1900. But before we really get into it, I thought it would help to set the scene a little and explain just a little more about where all this took place. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse is near the highest point on Eilean Mor, which is one of the Flannan Isles in the Outer Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland. It was a remote outpost that played a crucial role in guiding ships through the treacherous waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Really important that they had that lighthouse there. Now the Flannan Isles, they're a small group of islands, and I would urge you to check out the area on Google Maps to see just how remote and small this place is. Eilean Mor means large or big island in Gaelic, but when you see it, you will get a real sense of just how small and remote an area we're talking about here. And on Google Maps, go and have a look because there are photos of the place which you have to check out. When you see the steps and the cliffs, you'll see what I mean. So do go and have a look at the pictures, please. Now I got some details from the old Wikipedia about the actual lighthouse, and it tells us this. The 23 metre, that's 75 feet, lighthouse was designed by David Allen Stevenson for the Northern Lighthouse Board, otherwise known as the NLB. Construction was between 1895 and 1899, and it was undertaken by George Lawson of Rutherglen at a cost of $1,899, and they worked out in 2023 the equivalent cost would be £277,066. And that included the building, the landing places, the stairs and railway tracks. Yeah, railway tracks. I didn't know that. I never thought of it. These were used to transport provisions for the keepers and fuel for the light, which used 20 barrels of paraffin a year. And the goods were taken up steep gradients from the landing places by means of a cable-hauled railway. This was powered by a small steam engine in a shed that was next to the lighthouse. So they had a track descending from the lighthouse in a westerly direction, and then it curved round to the south. Now, roughly in the centre of the island, it forked by means of a set of hand-operated points which were called Clapham Junction. That's a reference to a railway junction in London, in case you didn't know. And one branch continued in its curvature to head eastwards to the east landing place on the southeast corner of the island, thus forming a kind of half circle, while the other, slightly shorter branch curved back to the west to serve the west landing, situated in a small inlet on the island's south coast. The final approaches to the landing stages were extremely steep, and all of the materials used had to be hauled up the 45 metre, that's 148 foot cliffs directly from supply boats. That's from Wikipedia. Now, the pictures I told you about on Google Maps, they really show you how big a task this would have been. The completed lighthouse was first lit on the 7th of December 1899. So back to the mystery at hand. What actually happened? Well, the story goes that on December the 15th, 1900, there was a transatlantic steamer called Arctur. I've heard it pronounced Archtor, but when you see it, Archtor doesn't make any sense, so I'm going to be referring it to as Arctur. It was on passage from Philadelphia to Leith, which is Edinburgh, and it passed near Flannan Isle, and noticed that the lighthouse was dark. It was actually noted in its log that the light was not operational despite the poor weather conditions, so obviously that would have raised concern and alarm. A few days later, the news was passed to the Northern Lighthouse Board, who quickly dispatched a relief vessel to go and investigate. The relief vessel was the lighthouse tender Hesperus, and it was unable to sail from Isle of Lewis as planned on the 20th of December due to adverse weather. And when I checked out the distances, it's about a 17-mile journey and would take around 3 hours to complete that journey. The Hesperus didn't reach the island actually until noon on 26th of December, so Boxing Day. The lighthouse was being manned by the three men, James Duckett, who was the principal keeper, Thomas Marshall, who was the second assistant, and Donald MacArthur, with a rotating fourth man who was spending time on shore. Now, Donald MacArthur was a temporary replacement for William Ross, who was the first assistant keeper, but he was actually on sick leave. MacArthur wasn't a regular permanent member of the lighthouse staff, but a substitute keeper filling in for Ross. So because of that, the term occasional keeper is often used to distinguish MacArthur from the regular keepers who were part of the permanent staff, and he's often referred to as the occasional in the paperwork about the incident. Just in case you're wondering, later on I'll refer to the occasional, you'll be thinking, what is she talking about? That's why he is called the occasional. When the crew of the Hesperus arrived at the island, the relief keeper found that the flagstaff had no flag, none of the usual provision boxes had been left on the landing stage for restocking, and even more strangely, none of the lighthouse keepers were there to welcome them ashore, which was the norm. That's where they should have been. Jim Harvey, who was the captain of the Hesperus, he attempted to reach them by blowing the ship's whistle and firing a flare, but was unsuccessful. There was no reply. So a boat was launched, and Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, was put ashore alone. So off he went to go and see what was going on. He climbed up the 160 steep steps and found the entrance gate to the compound and the main door both closed, but the beds were unmade and the clock unwound. Not good signs. He returned to the landing stage with this grim news and then went back up to the lighthouse with the second mate from the Hesperus and a seaman. A further search revealed that the lamps had been cleaned and refilled. A set of oilskins was found, suggesting that one of the keepers had left the lighthouse without them. But there was no sign of any of the keepers either inside or out on the island. So Moore and 3 volunteer seamen, they were left on the island to tend to the light, and the Hesperus returned to Lewis. Captain Harvey sent a telegram to the Northern Lighthouse Board dated 26th of December 1900, which went like this. A dreadful accident has happened at the Flannans. The 3 keepers, Duckett, Marshall, and the occasional, have disappeared from the island. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows, they must have been blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane. Now how he came to that conclusion quite so quickly I don't know, but that is what he said. Back on Eilean Mor, the men searched every corner of the island for clues, every nook and cranny, to find out the fate of the keepers. They found that everything was intact at the east landing, but the west landing provided considerable evidence of damage caused by recent storms. There was a box at 33 metres, that's 108 feet above sea level. It had been broken and its contents were strewn about. Also, the iron railings were bent over. The iron railing by the path was wrenched out of its concrete, actually, and a rock weighing more than a ton had been displaced. On top of the cliff, at more than 60 metres or 200 feet above sea level, turf had been ripped away as far as 10 metres, that's 33 feet, from the cliff edge. So was it just a storm then? Is that what caused all this damage and took the men with it? Of course, there had to be an investigation to try and ascertain what had happened to these three men, and on the 29th of December 1900, Robert Muirhead, a Northern Lighthouse Board superintendent, arrived to conduct the official investigation into the incident. It had been Muirhead who had originally recruited all three of the missing men, so he knew them personally. Can you imagine that? All three that you knew gone. He examined the clothing left behind in the lighthouse and concluded that Duckett and Marshall had gone down to the western landing stage and that MacArthur, who was the occasional, had left the lighthouse during heavy rain in his shirt sleeves. He also noted that whoever left the light last and unattended was in breach of NLB, that's the Northern Lighthouse Board rules, as it was never to be left unattended. He noted as well that some of the damage to the west landing was, quote, difficult to believe unless actually seen. He goes on, from evidence which I was able to procure, I was satisfied that the men had been on duty up till dinner time on Saturday the 15th of December, that they had gone down to secure a box in which the mooring ropes, landing ropes, etc. were kept, and which was secured in a crevice in the rock about 110 feet, that's 34 metres, above sea level, and that an extra large sea had rushed up the face of the rock, had gone above them, and coming down with immense force, had swept them completely away. There had actually been a log entry which said the keepers had gone to the west landing to secure ropes and a supply box. The lighthouse itself was found to be in good condition, with no signs of damage or destruction. Now, James Duckett left a wife and 4 children. Donald MacArthur left a wife and 2 children. I don't have any details about family for the third man. But the reputation of the lighthouse was actually tarnished for many years because of the incident, and people were not altogether satisfied with the findings of the investigation. No bodies were ever found, and as was often the case at that time, there was a mass of speculation in the newspapers. I guess some things just never change. In this case, though, there was a range of theories and ideas about what happened to the men, ranging from a sea serpent had carried the men away, that they had arranged for a ship to take them away and start new lives, that they had been abducted by foreign spies, or that they had met their fate through the malevolent presence of a boat filled with ghosts. More than 10 years later, the events were still being commemorated and elaborated on. There was a ballad in 1912 called Flannan Isle by Wilfred Wilson Gibson, and he refers to an overturned chair and uneaten meal laid out on the table, indicating that the keepers had been suddenly disturbed. However, in a first-hand account made by Moore, the relief keeper, he stated that the kitchen utensils were all very clean, which is a sign that it must be after dinner sometime they left. More stories emerged relating to unusual logbook entries. They supposedly have Marshall saying on the 12th of December that there were severe winds the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. He's also said to have reported that Duckett had been very quiet, and Donald MacArthur had been crying. Now, MacArthur was a veteran mariner with a reputation for fighting, so that didn't sound like a response he would have had to a storm. Log entries on the 13th of December were said to have stated that the storm was still raging and that all 3 men had been praying. Despite all 3 being experienced lighthouse keepers who knew they were in a secure structure 150 feet above sea level, and they would have known they were safe inside. What's strange here though is that there had been no reported storms in the area on the 12th, 13th and 14th of December. The final log entry is said to have been made on the 15th of December stating, "Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all." I don't know who came up with these log entries because an investigation about these was done by Mike Dash for the Fortean Times, which revealed that the logbooks were in fact all fictional. None of that was apparently reported in the logs. Now, subsequent researchers focused on the geography of the islands. The coastline of Eileanmore is deeply indented with narrow gullies called geos. The West Landing, which is situated in such a geo, it terminates in a cave, and in high seas or storms, water would rush into the cave and then explode out again with considerable force. Could it be possible MacArthur saw a series of large waves approaching the island and, knowing the likely danger to his colleagues, ran down to warn them, only to be washed away as well? That's a possibility. And research by James Love discovered that Marshall was previously fined 5 shillings when his equipment was washed away during a huge gale, so it could be that he was trying to avoid another fine, as that was a good deal of money at the time. So could he and Duckett have been trying to secure their equipment during the storm and were just swept away as a result? As there was always supposed to be a man tending the lighthouse, MacArthur should have stayed indoors. Did he leave in a hurry to desperately try and save his colleagues? Maybe. That would explain why the set of oilskins remained indoors and MacArthur's coat was still on its peg. Another theory is based on the first-hand experiences of Walter Aldebert, I'm not sure, who was a keeper on the Flannans from 1953 to 1957. He believed one man may have been washed into the sea, but then his companions who were trying to rescue him were washed away by more rogue waves. Oh, there's more theories, so buckle in. Another one is based on the psychology of the keepers. Allegedly, MacArthur was a bit of a volatile character, and this may have led to a fight breaking out near the cliff edge by the West Landing that caused all 3 men to fall to their deaths somehow. Maybe they went out to, secure some equipment, they were arguing how to do it, big fight broke out, who knows. Some at the time even thought MacArthur, with his temper, murdered the other 2, ditched their bodies into the sea and then threw himself off the cliffs. I mean, while it's possible for men in confined quarters to get on each other's nerves to the point where they snap and all hell breaks loose, especially when one of them has a history of violence, but without the bodies or crime scene to examine, none of these theories can be proven beyond being a theory. Although, as for the bodies not being found, I'm not surprised about that. I mean, we're talking about the Atlantic Ocean. If sharks didn't eat them, and there are plenty which could have, I mean, there was bull sharks, tiger sharks, lemon sharks, poor beagle sharks. Human bodies apparently don't take long to decompose in the marine environment, so lots of scavengers and opportunistic eaters could have played a part in taking care of the bodies. Sadly, we'll never know. So, what's happened to the lighthouse since? Well, in 1925, it became one of the first Scottish lights to receive communications from the shore by wireless telegraphy. In the 1960s, the island's transport system was modernised, and on the 28th of September 1971, the lighthouse was automated, and a reinforced concrete helipad was constructed at the same time to enable maintenance visits. And that, dear friends, really brings us to the end of the Flannan Isles Mystery. So what do you think really happened to the men? Was it bad weather? A freak wave while they were trying to secure equipment? Was it a fight between the men? Was it a giant serpent? Or do you think something else took the lives of Thomas Marshall, James Duckett and Donald MacArthur? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to know your thoughts on this one. I think it's most likely that they went out to secure equipment, and as somebody always had to be in the lighthouse to tend the light, he maybe saw a freak wave, a rogue wave coming, ran out to tell him, get back in, and he maybe hadn't noticed one before that. Maybe his timing was off, and something happened with the waves and it managed to take all 3 of them. Maybe they were arguing, maybe a fight had broken out, or maybe 2 had gone out to secure equipment, a fight had broken out, the 3rd man went out to stop the quarrel. While they were fighting, somebody lost their footing, or a wave came and took them. I'm kind of on the edge of one or the other. I do think the sea played a huge part. I think there was a wave that did take them, but were they arguing or not, I don't know. But there was obviously a clear reason for the 3rd guy to just run out. He obviously didn't expect to be out for long. So I'm veering on the theory that he just went out to warn them. He didn't think he was going to be out for long. He didn't take his coat, so he wasn't planning on being out for a great length of time. It was just a quick run out, get in, there's a wave coming. I think that's where I'm going to go with that one. Yeah, no, I've talked myself around. I'm going to go with that one. 2 were working on the equipment, focused on that. 3rd guy saw the wave coming, ran out quickly to tell them, didn't get his timing right, and they were all swept out. That's my theory. Would love to know your one. If you have a different one, please do let me know. So thanks for listening to the episode. Please join me again next week as I open another of the mystery files. But until then, you take care of your wee self.